this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today I'm going to mash up two questions. The first question comes to us from Arrogant Swami. And Arrogant Swami asks if I think the government, which I assume means the US government, is working with the spirits in places like Lilydale, which is a noted spiritualist community. The second question comes from Tika Carr, and is a follow-up to the earlier vlog on the subject of conspiracy theories. And Tika asks why I think conspiracy theory is so very prominent at this moment. And I think that these two questions actually dovetail in a very interesting way. We'll see if you agree, but I'm going to try to answer them both in the same vlog. And I'm going to start with Tika because there are several parts of this answer, not just one. The first one is, I think, as a believer in astrology, that astrological conditions undoubtedly are affecting the situation. I think, again, we've always had conspiracy theories, but they usually have not been quite as prominent or quite as extreme as they are at present. And I think that you would look to the outer planets, which are generational in their effect, and look to the aspects which are occurring to see the astrological aspects which are bringing this about. And I think that you would find at least a correlation there. I also think it does have to do with the internet making communication so very instantaneous. And I also think it's being very actively promoted in political ways for political gain. And there are a couple of different aspects to that, but one of them is a technique that we often see in the metaphysical community. And that is when you're doing things you ought not to be doing. If you put out a lot of false stories, it provides camouflage to what you have done. Because you can always say when it's brought back to you, well, look at all the lies that are being told in the wider world, this is just one of them. And my brother Edward wrote a treatise some time back called the Witch Wars Defense Manual. And this is one of the things it spoke about. And if you watch in the metaphysical community, you'll see this technique be used. But also now, I think if you watch in the wider community, you'll see it being used quite a lot as well. And I think that's the origin of certainly a number of political conspiracy theories. Now, the other question from Arrogant Swami, do I think the US government is working with the spirits in places like Lilydale? I'm going to answer this in a wider sense than it's asked. I'm going to address the idea of PsyOps in general, that is to say, using psychic and magical means for political or military purposes. And do I think the US government is doing this at this time? Absolutely not. And the reason I think absolutely not has to do with who's in control of the government and has been for a good long time. For at least a generation, relatively conservative Christians have had an outsized influence on the US government. Do I think the US government ever was involved in PsyOps? Yes, I do. In fact, I believe they've admitted it and claimed that they shut it down because they did not get good results. I think personally that they shut it down under political pressure from religious interests who objected to it for religious reasons. Do I think other governments are involved in PsyOps? I absolutely do. And I think that the lack of PsyOps in the US government is kind of apparent in what's going on in the country. And this is how the two questions dovetail. I do think that there is a great deal of energy being focused on the US at present to promote fear and cause chaos. If you remember, we've been doing a Corellian peace prayer campaign for quite some time now. And if you go all the way back to the start of that, this is exactly what we were talking about and why we felt it was necessary to do this. I think that PsyOps have been focused on the US for a number of years and that they have brought about a chaotic situation, at least in part. There are, as I say, many other things at play, but I personally think that PsyOps is part of it. Of course, this fits perfectly into our larger discussion of conspiracy theories and delusions, because many people would consider this to be both, but it's my opinion, and it's based on things that I've seen and experienced, and people that I've had occasion to meet. And I generally do not get carried away with these things. And I think that shutting down the PsyOps operations in the US was a terrible mistake, and I think it was undertaken again for religious reasons. Now, in the Christian Dominionist movement, they are playing around with PsyOps in what they call spiritual warfare, but I don't think they're terribly good at it when all is said and done. I think if they were, that we would probably not have quite as much chaos, at least in certain quarters of the country. But I think that in general, we have basically a psychic war going on that is pretty much one-sided. And I don't think this is a good thing for us, but I think it's where we're at. And what can we do about that? Well, you know, we started the Correllian Peace Prayer campaign specifically to counteract negative energies being focused throughout the world today. I don't think it's only at North America. I think it's throughout the world that PsyOps are being employed in a negative way. And I think that that is one thing that one can do, and I think one can do one's own work to try to shield oneself and the world itself from this negative energy, and to put out positive energy. But do I think the US government is meddling in PsyOps? I think that they shut it down a long time ago, and I don't think they were terribly good at it to start with. Do I think certain other governments are working with PsyOps? I think they are, and I think they're much better than we were. I've remarked in the past that having met people who claim to have been involved in US PsyOps operations, that probably about 80% of them were not people I would want in my secret psychic army if I were going to have one. And I think that that's probably part of what happened. Now, that remaining 20% were quite good, but I think that probably the results were not terribly desirable, and I think also that it was probably underestimated the extent to which others would continue forward. But most of all, again, is that conservative Christian influence, which was afraid of all of these things and opposed them on theological grounds, and therefore we have none. And I think that's part of why the country is in chaos, and I think that's part of why there is so much fear when, if you really look at it objectively, as a nation, we're fairly stable and have been for a very long time. We're very wealthy. We have the largest military in the world. We really didn't have a reason to implode the way we have been imploding. And I think that PsyOps is one of the reasons for it. I also think that internal political agitation is part of it. I think the rise of the internet has in some ways had a destabilizing influence in terms of things like conspiracy theories, and I also think that astrological aspects are important in understanding it as well. But I think all of these things have played a role. So, again, to sum up the answer, these are all the reasons that I think for Tika that conspiracy theories and chaos in general are so prominent at this exact moment. And for Arrogant Swami, no, I don't think that they're working with PsyOps, and I think there was a terrible mistake not to do so. So those would be my thoughts on the subject. I hope you find them interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from witchschool.com. Are you looking for the best in pagan and magical education? With more than 12,000 pages, witchschool.com is like having your own personal library with individual learning assistants to help you study. And Witchschool's Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere education system is available any place on Earth, anywhere you are and anytime you want it, as long as you have an internet connection. Witchschool's lifetime memberships are a great value. They really do last a lifetime. They've been there for years and they'll be there for years to come. So get your membership today at witchschool.com.